In 2007, Jim Parks and a few of his friends went to the beach. Now, Jim loved swimming. In fact, he was a trained swimmer and had taken a lot of classes, lifeguarding classes, but he was never a lifeguard. It was never a career he pursued. He was just good at it, but it was a hobby. And so it was one day in 2007, he went to the beach with his buddies. In his story, he sort of says, when you go out in the ocean and you play in the ocean, the sea will always bring you back to shore unless you get beyond a certain point. At that certain point, the current will start to take you out to sea. Or it could sort of hold you in a spot that is almost impossible to get out of, causing very often people to get tired and to drown. And so it was, Jim in 2007 was hanging out with his buddies, and he looks out to sea. And there's a woman, too far out, he says. He said, by too far out, I'm talking twice as far out as anybody else was. And clearly he could see that she was in some peril. She was waving her arms, she was struggling to stay above the water, and he recognized very quickly that this woman was drowning. He looked up at the lifeguard stand, and there was no lifeguard sitting on the chair. It turns out that he went to the restroom. Bad timing. So Jim immediately just went into action. He went into the water and he swam out to where this woman was. Now he knew that he was putting his own life in peril because he knew those currents were strong, and now he had to not only bring himself back, but he had to bring this lady back, and the weight of the two of them was fearful for Jim. But he did it. He managed to get to the woman. He said, put your arms around my neck, and she did, and he swam back to the shore. Boy, it took every bit of energy that he had, but he got back to the shore. And by the time we got back there, people saw what was going on, and someone was ready to give her CPR. The ambulance was on its way. And for Jim, well, wasn't quite the day he planned, but he saved a life. What a great feeling that must be, to save somebody's life. He didn't hear anything from this woman for quite a while, until 3 months later, when she sued him. The reason she gave for suing him was because, first of all, he took too long to rescue her. The second thing on there was he didn't allow the lifeguard to rescue her. And then the third thing was he took too long in getting me back. Thus, I swallowed too much water. How absurd is that somebody would do that to this person who saved them? In Romans chapter 1, verse 21, Paul writes, for although they knew God, and he's talking about the wicked and the godless here, although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. We hear a story like that and are aghast at the way someone would treat their Savior. Yet I think it's fair to say that even we sometimes can be just as guilty. Instead of saying what we should say all the time, which is thank you, thank you, thank you, instead we keep going, trying to get a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And sometimes forgetting about the fact that Jesus Christ died for us that we might live, and instead see him as some way of just getting more. This is the week of Thanksgiving. I've often said it is my favorite American holiday. I love Thanksgiving. It's not simply by virtue of what the holiday is. It's a great family for our time for our family to be together. It's a respite in the middle of a busy season for us. But the reality is we shouldn't have a special season for Thanksgiving, and we know this. Because we've been called to be thankful people, to live our lives as thankful people, to understand that we have a Savior who saved us, who has given us the opportunity for life eternal. Therefore, we should by nature simply be thankful. And Paul wrote about that in 1 Thessalonians when he said this, always be joyful. Continually be prayerful. In everything, Be thankful, because this is God's will for you in the Messiah, Jesus. And so, friends, let us remember those three things. That we are people who have been called to be joyful. We are people who have been called to be prayerful. And we are people who have been called to be thankful.